Hello, this is Robert. I'm your host for this episode of Able Pathways. To join in on the conversation, please visit the Able Pathways channel on Legal Arena. The address is www.legalarena.com/Able Pathways. There you can chat with a community of hosts, guests, and listeners. Listen to or download episodes. Suggest ideas or topics you would like to hear about. Let us know what you think. Or find our blog and video blog posts and our newest shows.
You are on the road to independence. Able Pathways is here to help you navigate the journey.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Able Pathways show. We have Danny Woodburn with us, and I would like to welcome Danny to the airways of Able Pathways.
Thank you for having me.
How are you tonight?
I'm doing well.
To help our guests understand who you are, could you briefly introduce yourself, and then we can go from there.
Okay, I'm Danny Woodburn. I'm an actor, and I guess I've been called somewhat of an activist at times on behalf of the disabled and disabled issues and people of short stature. I myself have a dwarfism, which makes me stand out in the crowd, but not a very tall crowd, apparently.
I understand that, and you have a great movie coming up. Is it at the end of March or the end of April?
Yes, March 30th, Mirror Mirror comes out. That marks my 20th film in my 22-year career.
Cool. And from what the sounds of it, is it about a takeoff of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs?
Yeah, it's a sort of a retelling of the story, definitely with the kids' audience in mind. It's some slapstick and some adventure and beautiful settings and a lot of fun characters and silliness and some scariness, for the kids and the family to see. And I play obviously Snow White. No, I play the Seven. I guess I would more closely be attributed to, Doc in that. The only similarity there is that I'm sort of the wizened, level-headed one of the group.
You being wise? I thought you said you were Snow White. Ha ha.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that sounds like a great film, and I look forward to seeing it in theaters in a few weeks.
Thank you.
So, but the key reason why we brought you on is a few weeks ago, our friend Rosie O'Donnell made some pretty outlandish comments that we would like people to respond to exactly what she said and truly get a conversation started. So Danny, could you take it from there?
All right, what's that question again, Rob? What's the question exactly?
Could you talk more about exactly what Rosie O'Donnell said and then we can talk about its impact on the
what
community.
Rosie O'Donnell said?
Yeah.
Rosie O'Donnell's comments recently on her show, she was doing an interview with Chelsea Handler, and she made, she basically tried to open up to Chelsea about her phobia, I guess you could see. She called it a mild phobia or a mild fear of little people. And I think she chose the wrong person to talk about that with. Chelsea is, from my experience, not so much a great proponent of the images of little people. And so it just became a sort of what I felt to be an offensive banter back and forth between them about little people. And I responded. I was one of several people to respond, but my response got to be posted up on the Huffington Post, and it was a bit snarky and sarcastic, only because I felt it was deserved.
And could you tell us a bit about your response?
I actually, before my response, I didn't write the response right away. I had people trying to reach out to the Rosie Show and to the Oprah Winfrey Network in the hopes of having a conversation and having a conversation on air, because the conversation that she and Chelsea had went out to her television audience. So I felt it only fair that a conversation between someone like myself, who has been an advocate on behalf of the issues of little people in the media and the way we're portrayed, I only felt it fair that conversation be continued in a smarter way, something a little less nasty. I mean, there was just ignorant comments made, like, how do little people, women, have babies? You know, this, and it wasn't said in curiosity, but more in disbelief. And I think that's where I started to take offense, this sort of disbelief that a little person, woman, could have an average-sized child, or could give birth, or, you know, there was just a tremendous amount of ignorance laced throughout their dialogue. And I felt the need to address that ignorance, and unfortunately, they had no response from me. They did not want to engage with me. They did not want to engage in, obviously, an on-air discussion with me. And so I took other avenues, and that was to write a little article through the Huffington Post. I got an opportunity to do that, and I took it.
And what was the response from the Huffington Post?
Well, it was just essentially the conundrum of disbelief that they have, that people could be older, adult, yet still have a smaller body, and this seemed to send them both into a tailspin. And also the addressing of the idea that Chelsea Handler is in some way some sort of rescuer of little people, because we wouldn't have work if it weren't for her and her show. And it was suggested that by her dialogue, and people respond and say, "Oh, they're comedians," and my feeling is that just because you're a comedian and maybe you're attempting humor doesn't allow you, in my mind, to spread ignorance about a group of people that is constantly fighting some of the stereotypical treatment that they receive in society. So I don't excuse the comedy or the political correct police, as they call it, when you respond to something that is offensive. They always say, "Oh, it's the politically correct police," and I say, "No, it's not. It's a group of people that needs recognition with regard to some of the discriminatory treatment that they've received, and we're not ready, I don't think, as a people. They're disabled in a lot of ways, and certainly little people are not ready to be put in the same arena as, say, people of color who have, in a lot of ways, found their strength in society and don't meet with the same kind of opposition that people with disabilities meet with.
I mean,
I feel like we're not quite open game yet for everyone. I think we're open game for us and for people that have a better understanding of us, but we're not open game to people that are ignorant, and we're not open game for ignorant comments that you think are funny.
but because here's how I saw Rosie's comments. If you would have replaced the words gay and lesbian with the same exact language they were using, Rosie would have been calling not only for an apology, but for the person's job. And
Well, I don't think an apology would come, because that would connotate that there was some wrongdoing on their part. So I don't think that will ever come. I think the language of communication is the one best approach, and they're just not willing really to challenge themselves. I mean, they might have some little people on an upcoming show, and I can't judge that, but if they're not having somebody to challenge what they said, then it's not really any kind of dialogue. There needs to be a challenge to what they said.
And I also agree that as a disabled community, we aren't worthy to take on these misconceptions. Because a year ago we had a state representative say that all disabled should go to Siberia and die, and that did not even make national news. However,
no, it's not. The only way it would make national news, I think, is if these comments were made about say, lesbians or African Americans. If these comments were made in the same style and with the same rhetoric that they were made about protected groups, more protected groups, more groups that bring a sense of outrage to this kind of dialogue, then this would be national headline news. This sort of event. It was national on some level, but as far as it hitting CNN, as far as it hitting all the major news networks on a regular basis, that didn't happen. And it doesn't happen usually when it has to do with little people or even people with disabilities a lot of times. I only just heard about investigations of longstanding abuses of institutionalized people with varying disabilities, and in particular a murder investigation involving a person with cerebral palsy who was institutionalized, and there was no questions made by the police of the various witnesses until more than a week after the discovery of the body. And it just plays into that idea that we are not as valued in society as other protected minority groups. And it's evident, I think, in my profession because there's such a low percentage of people with disabilities in media, television, film, all visual arts. There's such a low percentage of us visible that we are, because we're less represented in that way, we're less represented across the board.
I mean, you're hitting a lot of my big issues. I believe everything you've said. And the next thing is, when people are portrayed, they are normally able-bodied, playing disabled-bodied roles.
All right, so I'm sorry, Rob, what's the question exactly?
I'm saying you're absolutely correct, but when we see disabled people, they are playing more or being played more by able-bodied people and not people with disabilities.
Right. And you know what would be fascinating is if people saw people with disabilities in television and film more often, they would not necessarily see them. They would see them as just members of society, which we are. We make up probably 20% of the society. But we would be seen more as just members of society as opposed to disabled people. You know, the more saturated that the public at large becomes with the reality of disabled persons in the community, then there's more acceptance of that it's the norm, that it's the everyday.
And I also believe that media and Hollywood has to take the next steps because.
Well, luckily they are doing that. I mean, they're in the last negotiations with the SAG and AFTRA and the Motion Picture Television Producers Association, AMPTP. There was negotiated a task force to be set up to have an ongoing biannual dialogue between the producers and between the actors, between the hiring and the hirees, about increasing our visibility, increasing our accessibility, and our, essentially our believability in the world. So that I would say that, a lot of times they are baby steps, but there are steps being taken. And the more vocal I think people are about something like this, the more of an outcry there is about this kind of televised ignorance, then, again, we take steps in the right direction. And I'm only sorry to say that there wasn't more of an outcry in the little people community. I mean, some of the great representatives, Leah, I'm not sure what her last name is, a public relations person over at the LPA. She wrote a terrific open letter to Rosie O'Donnell and Chelsea Handler, and it was an attempt to gain understanding, but also an extension of the hand of that understanding. And I thought she really put it into words best. I oftentimes take another approach. I approach from a I don't want to say a place of anger, but even though that's where it comes from initially, but my position is a place of challenge. And I might extend the hand, but it's going to be a challenging hand, and you better take it. If you're going to make those statements, then you better take that hand that challenges you.
Yes, I would agree with that completely, because it's up to us to make a difference. And that's kind of why we have shows such as this, so we can talk about these issues. Because until people at home begin to demand the rights, we will not have any.
Right, but you and I are the choir. I mean,
yeah.
We're preaching to each other here. You're going to agree with me. I'm going to agree with you.
And what I'm saying,
what you got to do, Rob, is you got to get some of these folks on your TV, on your program there, that will challenge some of the things that you say, or challenge some of the things that I say, so that dialogue continues. Because we want the dialogue to continue in a healthy way. But this is great that we're on the show together and talking about this and reaching out to people. But a lot of the people, I'm sure, that listen to your program and that agree with this are members of the choir, And
yes.
I would love to see you on the Rosie O'Donnell show, having this discussion.
I would love to have that, but I'm not sure she would want me because I don't follow lock and step with what they believe.
Well, I also believe that there's a portion of the population in any minority that doesn't want to rock the boat necessarily because it's just not in them. And then there's a portion that, you know, they're tired. They're tired of the fight. You know, I mean, I get tired of the fight, certainly, and I do my best to maintain, but definitely it can be wearying. And hopefully that we can, you know, through things like this, like your show, we can bring more people to the front lines, you know, draft more people like yourself to involve themselves in the way that you are.
I mean, because like you were saying, we have to build the troops. Because if we don't build the troops, nothing will happen.
Right. We need a rolling army is what we need.
Yes. And people in my audience is publishing, what can they do? You can share this show. You can share anything as long as it continues the dialogue. Because if we sit back, we would be the first to lose. And I also strongly believe with the economy the way it is, the disabled will face the harshest.
And you and I are in a unique position, Rob. You and I get to express ourselves through the media in many ways. You through your podcast, and me through interviews with newspaper people or being able to write for the Huffington Post. But I mean, it has to go into the smaller battles too, where people write letters, where people complain, where people say, why aren't I seeing more people with disabilities on American Idol? You don't think people are showing up to sing? Why aren't I seeing these people? You know, why aren't they being, you know, featured? Why aren't they being highlighted? Why aren't they getting through?
I will give you an example. I know of a comedian, Nina G, who was up for America's Got Talent, and she did not get past the second round. And you have to wonder what's happening with that.
Yeah.
But my next question, not changing the subject, but kind of is, you said that you've appeared in 20 different movies. How many of those movies did you appear in because you were Danny Woodburn? And how many of those movies did you appear in because you were a little person?
That's a good question. Some of the films, like I did a film a few years ago called Watchmen, and I played a villain named Big Figure who's in prison. And the interesting thing about the role is, even though it was written originally as a little person, there's no real emphasis on any of those qualities about him. So there's a uniqueness to that, in that it wasn't necessarily required, even though it was originally written that way. It wasn't anything that was really addressed. And there's been a lot of television shows where that has come to pass as well. You know, there was a few touchstone moments in the episode of Bones, but the character was very outside the box for me. He was one of the heads of the State Department, and was dealing with one of the other characters in a very real way, albeit his relationship to me did every now and then address what he thought was my low self-esteem because of my size, but my character always skirted that issue. There's been some other films, a lot of low-budget movies that I've done, where some of those issues aren't addressed at all. I recently finished filming a movie called White Trash Christmas Carol, and there's no emphasis at all put on my height or my dwarfism. I don't know all of them offhand, but Employee of the Month is another one. There's not a lot of emphasis put on it. I think it was just a fun idea for them to use somebody smaller who was very mean.
Yeah.
So there's been things like that where the emphasis is not tremendous, and then there's of course been the various mythological creatures that I've played in the past, and that's all been great. And people always say, oh, you play all those mythological roles, and isn't that sort of stereotypical? And not I don't really see it necessarily as stereotypical, or maybe typecasting in a sense, but it's just if the body fits the part, then terrific. But one of the things that's come our way now is the need to eliminate people of short stature from those roles. There's been a number of films where they have CGI'd average-sized people into smaller people. Lord of the Rings, for example, Fred Claus, Elf. A lot of these films did not use little people on a regular basis where they've been used that way before. So in the past, I might have said, oh, I don't want to get typecast into those roles, but now I'm seeing that a lot of these roles are being taken away from us by average-sized people. So that, to me, I find more offensive than actually doing the roles.
Yeah.
For example, the other Snow White picture that's coming out is using average-sized actors to portray the Seven Dwarf characters, and they're just going to make them smaller.
Oh my word.
So that just, I think, feeds into the same kind of thing that we were talking about with representations of disability.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason why I asked that question because there's very few examples. I think Robert David Hall's character on CSI does it the best. He's on crutches, but that does not affect his performance at all.
Right, and it's interesting because he tells a story about, I'll just tell it again because he's told it many times in public, that he worked with a director one time who was watching him in the scene and said, can we lose the crutch? That's like, why? Why is it such a hassle for you to not, for you to shoot around the crutches,
Yeah, but I also...
So he tells that story about the disconnect that still exists,
Yeah, but almost that's kind of a compliment to him.
Yeah, it is, in a way. It's a sort of a backhanded compliment, as they call it.
Yeah. So, but are there any other things you would like to touch upon? Because I have found this to be real interesting, and I would like you to talk about Meow Meow once again so that our audience can come and watch it.
Yeah, hopefully people will come out in droves and support it. I hear the people that have seen it so far have enjoyed it. That's what I have coming out right now, and I continue with my writing partner. We work on other projects, and hopefully we'll get one of those sold soon, and we can come back on the show and discuss that.
Cool. Okay. And I have one other positive example. I was doing some research for the show, and I saw that you had kind of the same discussion with Roger Ebert about the use of the word midget.
Right.
And he
had done a review of a movie that I was in called Death to Smoochie. And regardless of whether or not he favoritively reviewed the show or didn't favoritively review the show, he made the point of saying in a negative way that one of the problems with the show was that it had midgets. And it was this sort of like, this sort of winky wink, waka waka moment, like, uh-oh, look out, it's even got midgets. And I took offense at that because I wanted to know what the issue was with that particular idea. And we had a long back and forth discussion that you could probably find on his website, and it was a very amiable, dialogue. And I essentially talked to him about the fact that, there are certain words that are often used to eliminate a person's humanity, and in the case of little people, that word stands out as number one. It's always used in a way that sets us apart from the human race, and I take great offense at the casual style with which it is bandied about by the media. And it's still interesting to me that people don't recognize how it is dehumanizing or how it does eliminate the humanity of a group of people by subjecting them to so drastic a label that is so separatist. And that's why I went after him in a way. And it was years later that I saw the review. I hadn't even seen it when it came out originally. And we had the discussion, I think, in 2004, and the review had come out in 2002, but somehow it got past my radar. And then when I finally saw it, I wrote to him, and he wrote back, and we had basically an email conversation that he ended up posting to his website. And I'm pretty sure it's still out there on the internet. People can go and look at it and see the philosophies and the desire to, make a bridge, between someone that doesn't understand the power of that word, or the power of, someone in the media who doesn't understand the power of words, who comes to an understanding, a humble understanding of what that word means, and then agrees to never use it again in his writing. So I just thought that was a real triumph.
I found that today while quickly researching it, and it meant to talk about that sooner because it looked like the perfect contrast to the Rosie O'Donnell situation.
Right. It was a good moment, and I consider him a friend in that sense.
Cool. So I want to say thank you very much for being part of Able Pathways. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Yes, Rob. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a real pleasure, and I wish you great success with your continued podcast.
Because, like you said, we need to reach those to make a difference and challenge stereotypes, not let the able-bodied person tell our stories.
Absolutely.
So, okay, thank you very much. And
terrific, Rob. Thank you.
I hope we can chat again soon.
Okay, man. Take care.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll talk to everyone next time on Able Pathways. Thank you again.
Sure, Rob. Thank you, man.